Hello there, everyone. This is Ask Dr. Bob, and this is where you ask me, Dr. Bob Gabbay, the Chief Scientific and Medical Officer for the American Diabetes Association, your questions about diabetes. And for those of you that are new, welcome. For those of you who've been following me on this monthly program, great to have you back. Tell your friends about it. Also, just a reminder, beyond what we do here, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn to get lots of more information about things that can help you live a healthier life with diabetes. And so every month we tend to think about a theme, and this month it is LatinX Heritage Month. And so we ask you all for questions in this around Latinx Heritage Month, and we got a bunch. So without further ado, I am going to dive back in. And again, please share this with your friends and family because we want this information to get out to as many people as possible. So first question is, and this is a great place to start. So why are Latinx people at increased risk for developing diabetes? And so it's a great question. So first, let me just share some of the statistics of what that risk is. And for any adult in the U.S., the lifetime risk of developing diabetes is about 40%. But for the Latinx community, it is 50%. What does that mean? That means that, in essence, if we don't do anything about this, half of the Latinx community will develop diabetes in their lifetime. 1/2. That's a huge number. And what makes it worse and scarier is that Hispanics are they're more likely to develop diabetes at a younger age. And because they develop it at a younger age, they have a longer time to have diabetes and unfortunately, therefore, have a greater risk of developing the complications of diabetes, which we'll review in a moment. So the next sort of question, what are some of the risk factors that predispose the Latinx community to develop diabetes? And there are the usual risk factors like having a family history of diabetes, and most importantly, obesity. And we'll talk more about obesity in a moment because we have a particular way to define it, not just by what people look like and cosmetic sort of thing, but more from a medical point of view. So I'll talk about body mass index, BMI, in a moment. But individuals are more likely to be obese, and their obesity tends to be central in the middle of the body, belly fat. Belly fat is particularly high risk for developing diabetes, for type 2 diabetes. And there's some understanding of why, but we don't fully understand. But we know that central obesity, belly fat, puts one at higher risk for developing diabetes. So, why does the Latinx community have a higher rate of diabetes? Well, it is those risk factors and more likely to have obesity. And then, unfortunately, they are more likely to live in poverty. And here's the thing we know about how poverty links to diabetes. It increases the risk of developing diabetes. And if you look at individuals that are living below the federal poverty limit, that those individuals are twice as likely to die from diabetes as those that are not living in poverty. So it really is a big issue. And that's why, these incredible statistics where the Latinx community are more likely to develop diabetes, more likely to die from their diabetes, more likely, as we'll talk about, to have complications for diabetes, is all really why the American Diabetes Association has taken on this effort to uh, fight for health equity now. And if you go to our website or you just look up Health Equity Now, you can see all sorts of information about what we're doing about this issue. And in particular, I want to point you to the Health Equity Bill of Rights. That is really what we're fighting for on your behalf. That everyone with living with diabetes, for example, should have access to the treatment they need to live healthy, to have access to healthy food that allows them to thrive with their diabetes. So, okay, so that's all about why uh, uh, the Hispanic community are at an increase for developing diabetes and some of those risk factors. The next question is, what type of diabetes is more common in this community? And it's really type 2 diabetes that we're talking about. And so that's really, not that they don't also develop type 1 diabetes, but they're less likely to develop type 1 than non-Hispanics, but much more likely to develop type 2. And the statistics I just gave you a moment ago are really all about type 2. And so what can people do to prevent developing diabetes and prediabetes, which is, sort of the earlier stage? Well, it really centers around having a healthy body weight. And if one is obese or overweight, trying to lose weight. And so I mentioned that, we don't define obesity by what people look like. Oh, you look like you're heavier than somebody else. No, we define it based on scientifically, based on what puts people at risk for bad things happening because of their body weight, develop complications and risk of diabetes. And the way that's measured is by body mass index, or BMI. And there are a bunch of things on the web that have a BMI calculator. If you look that up, you can plug in your height and weight. And what it does is basically says whether someone is overweight or obese based on their height and weight. So just to give you an example, let's say someone is 5'6", and they weigh 185 pounds. Their BMI is 30, and that is where we define somebody as having obesity. So that's just an example. You can plug in you or your loved one's body mass index, your height and weight, and it'll tell you what your BMI is. And BMI over 30 is considered obesity. Okay, so if I have prediabetes, what can I do to prevent developing diabetes? And we know the things that work. And there's in fact a diabetes prevention program that's around the country. There's probably one near you. You can look up on the Center for Disease Control website. They list all of the sites, and you can enroll in a program that'll help you achieve these goals. But what are the goals? What are you trying to get? The idea is to try to exercise 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And that exercise doesn't have to be anything crazy, running and, all of that, although those things are great. But it's really going at a moderate walking rate for 30 minutes. So 30 minutes 5 times a week walking can help you with some changes in what you eat to lose 7% of your body weight. If you can do that, you can delay the development of diabetes. And again, there are programs out there to help you to do that. So what does 7% of your body weight mean? Well, just simple, if you weigh 200 pounds, the idea would be to try to lose 14 pounds. And again, it is doable. but often requires help, and that's where talking to your healthcare professional about this or looking for where the diabetes prevention program is available near you. There are also online virtual programs that you can try as well, and definitely worth trying to do. Okay, so the next question here, and again, we are on LatinX uh, Heritage Month, and we're talking about diabetes on Ask Dr. Bob in case you just joined us. And so the next question is, how does one know what their risk of developing diabetes? And there's actually a simple way. Uh, if you go to the American Diabetes Association website, diabetes.org, there is a risk test that you could take, and it just asks you to answer a bunch of questions about yourself, and it'll tell you exactly whether you're low risk or high risk, and again, things that you can do to help reduce your risk. And really, a lot of this relates to, obesity, as we talked about, having a family history of diabetes. So go to the ADA website and encourage your family members and loved ones to see what your risk of diabetes is. Next question is, what are some of the complications of having type 2 diabetes? And, particularly for the Latinx community, they are at greater risk for some of these complications, specifically blindness. They're 50% more likely to develop blindness from their diabetes if not treated appropriately compared to non-Hispanics. And they're also at much higher risk for developing kidney disease. And, diabetes continues to be the leading cause of kidney failure, and the Latinx community has a higher risk of developing kidney failure and ultimately the need for potentially dialysis. The good news is, and this is the next question, so perfect setup for the person that asked this. So what can I do to prevent complications of diabetes? And let me just go back and say I talked about some of those complications, right? It's blindness, it's kidney failure, it's amputations, it's heart disease, it is a risk of stroke. All of those are higher in people with diabetes. And what we're learning is a newer complication that we'll talk about at some other one of our Ask Dr. Bob's, and that's liver disease. So that is starting to become the latest complication of diabetes. And in fact, diabetes is the leading cause, becoming the leading cause of liver disease in the U.S. So let's move from here are all the things that could happen to this great question, what can I do to prevent these complications? And I'm going to give you four things. It is the A, B, C, and screening. Okay, what's the ABC? A is about A1C, which is the measure of your blood glucose levels over 3 months. It's an average. So getting your A1C in a healthy range, that's number one. The B of ABC is blood pressure, maintaining a good, healthy blood pressure. Often that requires medication, but it's usually achievable. So, and it's important that you check your blood pressure at home so you know whether your blood pressure is in goal if you have diabetes. So A1C, B, blood pressure, and C, cholesterol. Making sure your cholesterol, your lipids are in the right range, and that's where getting them checked at least yearly by your healthcare provider so you know where you're at, know where your goals need to be, and again, many times, in fact, I would say most times as one gets older, one needs medication to, control cholesterol levels in the right range and prevent heart disease and stroke. So it's four things. It's the A, B, C, and screening. What are we screening for? We're screening for early complications. So getting a yearly eye exam. If you catch eye disease early, it's treatable. Nobody needs to lose their eyesight. So it's getting screened for eye disease and kidney disease with a urine and blood test that your healthcare professional can do. And again, caught early, we can prevent kidney failure. So it's important to get those screenings and checking your feet. Checking your feet can help prevent the kinds of problems with one's feet that can develop into amputations, which is what we talked about last month. So prevent complications by the A, B, C, and screening. Okay, next question. So are Latina women at increased risk for developing gestational diabetes? Yes, very much so. And so, as a reminder, gestational diabetes is diabetes that develops in the third trimester of pregnancy, about 24 to 28 weeks. And that's why we recommend women all get screened for development of gestational diabetes during their pregnancy. Not only that, but now, and this is newer information. The American Diabetes Association publishes this thing called the Standards of Care, which are the guidelines around the world for how to best manage diabetes, and it's targeted to healthcare professionals so they know what they need to do to keep you healthy. And one of the new recommendations this year is not only to screen as we've long recommended for women in the third trimester for gestational diabetes, but really if you're planning to become pregnant and during the first trimester of your pregnancy, at your first prenatal visit, to get screened for pre-existing diabetes, because many women, and particularly Latina women, are more likely to have diabetes, not know it, get pregnant, not know it until until they get diagnosed with gestational diabetes. So it's important to learn whether you have diabetes early on, ideally before pregnancy, but if not, at your first prenatal visit. Okay. And I just got a couple more questions here. We're moving quickly. So this is a lovely question from somebody, and I really like this. How can one support a friend or a family member who's living with diabetes? And you know, I think the first thing is ask them, because people need support in different ways, and it's a good chance to have a dialogue. Don't assume you know the answer. For example, it's not always helpful to be the sugar police that is telling people what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Not everybody reacts well to that. You might not be one of the people that would love somebody every time you're taking a bite into something saying, should you be eating that? That can sometimes be counterproductive. So ask them how you can help them. If you're living with someone with diabetes, maybe it's, and you do the grocery shopping, it may be having healthy foods in the house and less unhealthy foods. It can be acting as a buddy for them to exercise. Hey, let's commit together to walk on Tuesday mornings every week, or Tuesdays and Wednesdays, or whatever that might be. So be careful not to overdo it, and ask them how you can support them. And then the last question is, where can members of the Latinx community go to find support and resources? And this is a place where the American Diabetes Association has really made a concerted effort. So you can go to diabetes.org/Espanol. And you'll find a lot of good information there. We also now have a special Facebook group in Spanish, so that's another place to go to and recommend to your friends and family. And also, for all information for everybody about diabetes, it's diabetes.org/resources. So that's another great site. So thank you for joining me today. this was in honor of Latinx Heritage Month. This is Dr. Bob Gabbay, the Chief Scientific and Medical Officer for the American Diabetes Association. Thank you for joining Ask Dr. Bob. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and we'll join you next month. Spread the word to your friends and family about this program and all the other great information the American Diabetes Association provides for you. And see you next time.